Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the totally fascinating psychology of career transitions. And, specifically that really unique friction that happens when close colleagues completely misunderstand our personal growth. Have you ever felt like you're evolving, but the people around you just insist on keeping you in the exact same old box? Well, we're going to explore a deeply relatable story that breaks down exactly why this happens, and more importantly, how we can navigate it. So, to really get into this, let's examine a real exchange between two lifelong professionals. We've got Darren, who is right on the cusp of retiring from a massive career as a teacher and psychologist. And then we have his highly respected colleague, Jean Quan. Darren tries to share this incredibly vulnerable, profound realization about his retirement, but the response he gets? Man, it perfectly captures that uncomfortable, sinking feeling of being completely misunderstood by someone you really thought was on your wavelength. Section 1. The Warrior's Path to Retirement. Let's look at the catalyst for this entire psychological deep dive. It all kicks off with a text message sent at 6:30 p.m. on a Saturday evening. Darren, who is just on the verge of stepping away from his heavy professional responsibilities, sends Jian Quan a powerful metaphorical question. He asks, "Is your internal clock still stuck in past wars?" By sending this, Darren is basically waving a flag, signaling his desperate need to step away from a lifelong battle. He's been wearing this heavy armor of a teacher, a psychologist, a caretaker for years, and he is just finally ready to take it off. And this brilliantly illustrates the specific psychological unspooling Darren feels he must go through. It's a four-step process. First step, he must put down the armor. Second, he has to mentally return to the ruins, the metaphorical battlefields of his career. Third, he needs time to really mourn what is lost and the people he couldn't save. And finally, step 4, he must adjust his internal clock because it's still running at that frantic, high-alert speed of wartime. It's a remarkably beautiful, holistic view of retirement, right? Section 2. Differing roles, diagnostician versus blesser. So Darren shares this deep reflection, expecting some empathy, but what happens next introduces our core conflict. The very next day, Jian Quan responds with something so highly analytical that it just completely misses the mark. He texts back, "Stuck in the past," usually past inner feelings and trauma or inner family dynamics. Wow. Jian Quan immediately frames Darren's profound spiritual transition as a clinical problem. He looks at this gorgeous metaphor of a warrior seeking peace and instantly reduces it down to childhood trauma and family issues. And look, it's not that Jian Quan is technically wrong in a clinical sense, but it is entirely the wrong frequency for the conversation Darren was trying to have. Darren looks at this text and asks himself a really difficult question. Are we truly able to think together? See, Darren had actually been considering inviting Jian Quan into a collaborative community post-retirement. But this single interaction makes him stop in his tracks. He starts wondering if they can ever truly collaborate, if Jian Quan insists on viewing him through this rigid clinical lens. It begs the question, if a colleague can't step out of their theoretical framework to just be human with you, can you really build a future together? This brings us to an absolutely crucial point, the difference between two very distinct roles. Darren realizes he didn't want a diagnostician. He didn't want someone quick to point out problems and analyze causes from some position of authority. What he really wanted was a blesser. He actually remembered a former teacher of his who, when hearing about his retirement, literally wept with joy, praising his talents and celebrating his future possibilities. Because a blesser sees the person in their potential, while a diagnostician is just hunting for pathology. Darren wanted a peer to walk with, not a doctor to diagnose him. Section 3. Differing views, trauma or transformation. Now let's see how this builds into a deeper psychological conflict between two entirely different ways of viewing human growth. What's so interesting here is how it frames the core disconnect between the two colleagues. Jian Quan is focused purely on trauma. He's looking backward, zeroing in on what Darren previously suffered, his past familial wounds, the heavy burdens he carried. But Darren is firmly focused on transformation. Transformation definitely acknowledges the past, for sure, but it asks a totally different question. It asks, how do we use these experiences to grow an entirely new life form? Essentially, Jian Quan is staring at the cocoon while Darren is desperately trying to talk about the butterfly. Darren actually pushes back on this. He messages Jian Quan again, emphasizing, "I am shedding my old self. I am undergoing a profound transformation." He doesn't deny his past family wounds. He knows his father's early injury deeply shaped his sense of responsibility, but he is absolutely insisting that his current journey is about evolving beyond those wounds, not just dissecting them over and over again. He wants his colleague to look forward with him rather than staring backward at him. Section 4. A shift in mindset. Comparison to choice. This fundamental misunderstanding brings us to a massive overarching epiphany for Darren regarding their professional relationship. You see, Darren had been dreaming of building this incredibly diverse, non-hierarchical community. He wanted to organically integrate all these different fields: school counseling, psychological consulting, AI, education, nature experiences, art creation, life narrative, the whole shebang. He envisioned a space where professionals nurtured each other without pulling rank. And initially, he really wanted Jang Kwon to be a core part of this vibrant, multidisciplinary dream. But right while Darren is mulling all this over, Jen Chang reaches out again. This time, he offers to send Darren a book, and the title, Longing for a Father, Losing a Father and Its Impact. When Chen Chang follows up by offering a book explicitly about father wound trauma, it completely cements Darren's realization. Chen Chang is a good guy with good intentions, but he is always going to try to fit Darren into this specific, analytical box. Darren is talking about the vastness of nature and art and a new life chapter, and Jen Sheng is still pointing squarely at a childhood father wound. This triggers a huge perspective shift for Darren. For years, he used to engage in comparison with Jen Kwon. Who has the better method, who's right, who's wrong. But right then and there, he shifts from comparison to choice. Choice doesn't care about high versus low or winning versus losing. Choice cares about direction, alignment, and mutual fit. Darren just stops trying to prove his philosophy is superior and realizes, hey, our working styles just aren't compatible for the future I want to build. Actually, it's an incredibly liberating moment for him. Section 5. Moving forward. Different paths. This leads us to the peaceful and honestly quite beautiful concluding resolution of our explainer. Darren realizes something absolutely vital here. Good intentions and mutual appreciation do not automatically equal a good fit for future collaboration. Jin Kwan's book was a genuine gesture of goodwill. He really is a talented, caring professional. But Darren learns that accepting someone's goodwill doesn't mean you are somehow obligated to walk the exact same professional path with them. You can appreciate a person deeply from afar without needing them to be your co-pilot. As Darren finally lets his inner warrior put down the armor and step into the quiet ruins to heal and embrace the future, we want to leave you with this question to reflect on. Think about your own colleagues and relationships. Are you still trying to pull someone onto your path, forcing them to understand your transformation? Or is it maybe time to acknowledge your differences, appreciate their goodwill, and peacefully let them walk their own road while you confidently walk yours? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and we'll see you next time.